So it's 7:30, I'm in Manchester, and there's a fire in the hotel. So we've just been kicked out. I'll have to see what happens next. So there was a fire. I'm on the 10th floor. There was a fire on the 7th floor. So, someone had set fire to the bed. I would imagine they were having a sneaky cigarette. If you're going to have a sneaky cigarette and try and not risk getting caught, the least you would do is have it out the window and not on your bed, right? And try and set fire to the building and get us all kicked out in the morning. Well, the good thing is I've had some breakfast, so now it's time for a shower and get rid of this, have a shave. Right, so fed, cleaned, watered, and ready for the day. The fire is out, the fire brigade have left. There was a fire, as I said, but nothing really much to worry about. The only thing that really caused any stress for me was the volume of the fire alarm. It was just made me jump out my skin. But otherwise, all is good. But that does lead me neatly into what I want to talk about this week, which is the principal causes of stress, of which I've found there are three principal causes of stress. Let's have a look at these. Thank you very much. Cheers. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye now. So, all three principles are based on fear. They come out of fear. And fear comes from a lack of control of a situation. And the first principle is the fear of the unknown. So the fear of the unknown is this. If you are in a potentially bad or potentially dangerous circumstance and you don't know the status of that situation, then you are not in control of it. And when there's a lack of control, then there's a lack of a sense of safety. And when that happens, the primal instincts kick in and the stress or survival mechanism is activated. For example, you may be in a relationship and you are worried that your spouse or your partner may be seeing someone, or your job may be at risk. You don't know how safe your job is, and it might be a falling out with your boss, might be your colleagues talking behind your back, or it might be just because you just don't like it there anymore and you don't know when you're going to take the leap. Or it could be mounting debt and you're worried about the bailiffs or the debt collectors come knocking on your door and you don't know when or if it's going to happen. It could be a whole number of things. Whatever the situation, I don't know a single person who enjoys stewing over something they don't know the status of and they have no control over. And I think we can universally agree on that one. So what can we do about it? Well, it sounds simple, possibly even stupid, but the best way to deal with this situation is to ask the question. Find out, communicate, do whatever you need to do to find out the truth of the situation. Oh, and approach with caution. Let's just take the scenario of you might be worried about your spouse or your partner seeing someone. If that is the case, only you know the dynamics of your own situation. So approach with caution, because if you ask the question and you find out that they're not seeing someone else, well, now what you've done is accuse them of seeing someone else, and trust breaks down, and that's a whole different subject which we're not going to cover today. So no matter what the situation, find out the status, because once you know, you are fully equipped to deal with that situation. It won't happen to you. You can deal with it, and then you can move on to the next level. It might be something quite simple and straightforward, and it might be the answer you wanted to hear, which was you can move on nicely. Or it might not be the answer you wanted to hear, and now you have to deal with it. But now you know, which leads me on to the next principal cause of stress. So my son is playing rugby today. I've got a bit of time to kill. So let's go through principle 2. We now know principle 1, which is taking control of the fear of the unknown. Once you know, then that's principle 2, which is fear of the known. let's use the previous example of your partner. Your partner may be seeing someone else. If that's the case, then there is nothing you can do to make that your partner want you again. The only thing you can do is to take control of that situation and start to plan your future. The chips have fallen the way they have. You can't change that situation. What you can do is take control of it. And what I mean by that, I know it sounds really stupid and simple, but what I mean by that is if your partner is seeing someone else and they don't want you back, then one, keep your dignity by not trying to force them back into your life. And secondly, once you've got your dignity, you feel that sense of a lift anyway, and you'll naturally feel that. But also, take control of the situation. What do I mean by this? Well, your partner is seeing someone else. There's nothing you can do about that, but in planning your future without that person in your life, you are now in control. Now, it might not be the outcome that you wanted, but it is the outcome anyway. So you may as well deal with that scenario. In taking control of that situation, you are no longer in fear of your future. And fear is an emotion that keeps us alive. It's a primal instinct. So, but in short bursts, that's a good thing. In long bursts, it's bad for your mind. It's bad for your physical health. I've known someone who's had a heart attack and died. I know someone who's had cancer. I know someone who's had a stroke, all from stress. Do not underestimate what stress can do to your body, physically do to your body. It's one of the biggest causes of illness and death. So do not underestimate the impact of long-term stress. It can kill you, quite literally. But I've gone off track a bit. Taking control of the situation means that everything's on your terms, not on your partner's terms, who is seeing someone, or not on your boss's terms, who is about to fire you, or not on the bailiff terms, who is about to come knocking on your door. And by the way, if that is one of your situations, then just call them. That's the way of dealing with the known. You now know that a bailiff is going to come knocking at your door and they're going to want some money, or they're going to take your belongings, your possessions away. The best way to deal with that, contact them, get in control of the situation. In today's world, debt collectors are duty bound to come to an arrangement that is workable for you as an individual. So any scenario that you have, just gain control of that situation. It might not be the ideal thing that you have to be dealing with, but once you are in control of that, you no longer have to fear it, and you can relax a bit more and deal with the next step of your life in a much more controlled way. And that is how to deal with principle 2, which is fear of the known. So for this section, there's no snappy transition into it. I just want to... Usually I would have notes on anything I'm going to talk to you about, just so it keeps me on track. But for this one, I'm going to speak straight from the heart and just say it as I think it. So the third principal cause of stress is this: the fear of reliving a horrific or distressing situation. Now, I've done this, and it manifested itself as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Thankfully, not too many people have to go through this fear, the third principle. But for those that do, this is the way I have dealt with it, and I hope it can help you. The moment was actually, I'll give you a brief outline, and not to make small of the situation. It's actually the most terrifying moment of my life, and I've been in some very, very scary moments throughout my life. But what happened was, my son was at the time 3 months old, and he just stopped breathing. His body went limp, his eyes turned up into his head, and he turned blue. So to all intents and purposes, he was dead. We'd lost him. And whether it was my wife's medical knowledge as a medical professional, or just her motherly instincts. I don't know. But she was very quick in thinking while I was on the phone to the paramedics. She just lifted him and smacked him on his back quite hard, and it jolted him back to life. So I pretty much think that's what saved him. I don't know what the cause was, but when the paramedics turned up, he wasn't out the woods yet. They shoved all sorts of tubes down him, and we took him into hospital. So I don't know what was the cause of it, but what I do know is the amount of stress that it caused me for the days, the weeks, and the months, and even actually years after that moment. And it wasn't me just reliving that moment. It actually created other horrific thoughts. Thoughts that even the worst, even the creators of some of the most horrific horror films that you could think of, they couldn't even think of this stuff. The thoughts are quite out there, and I wouldn't wish them on anyone. But when they did arrive in my head, I was having nightmares and daymares. So I couldn't sleep at night, and I couldn't think straight during the day when these thoughts entered my head. How did I deal with them? Well, in the same way I still deal with them now. I take that moment when it enters my head, and it will be at one extreme end of the spectrum of thoughts that I might have in my head. And I take my mind away from that and take it to the complete opposite extreme end of that spectrum of thoughts and plant my mind there. And all I'm doing is flooding my mind with thoughts from the opposite extreme end of that spectrum. It works for me. I don't know if it's a way that a psychologist or a therapist would say is the best way to do it, but it's the way that it works for me. It works for me very well still to this day, because occasionally those thoughts still enter my head. I was just driving along with my son, who is now a very happy, healthy, nearly 14-year-old boy. But I was just driving along, and I saw something out the side of the car. I was driving along. It triggered those thoughts, and very quickly, but very subtly. He didn't even know it was happening. I put my hand on the back of his neck and just told him how much I loved him. He looked at me and smiled and was happy with that. He didn't know what was going through my mind, but all I was doing was just flooding my thoughts with really what I want to think about, so that there is actually no space for the thoughts that I don't want. So that's how I deal with it. The third principal cause of stress, the fear of reliving a horrific or distressing situation. That was William at rugby training this morning. I thought I'd throw some greenery in there just to lighten things up a bit after that outpouring of the heart. I hope you found those 3 points helpful. Next week, we'll be looking at how living in the past can sometimes be really bad for you. If you like what I'm doing, then please do hit the like button, share these videos, subscribe, don't forget to subscribe, and hit the bell next to the subscribe button. That will let you know each time I upload a new video. Your comments, I'd love to know your comments. If you've got any thoughts or questions, then just put them in the comment section below. That's me for this week, and I'll see you next week.